Hello, people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello. Come in. Come on in. Get your audio up. Hello, Ken. Hello, people. Oh, it's so fun to see you guys.
Sarah.
I've missed you. Hi. Glad you're here. Lauren, yay. Okay. Judy, okay. Cool. We're letting people get linked into the audio. It's wonderful to be with you guys. Always a highlight of my day. And while you guys are getting linked in with the audio, I'm going to kind of just get us kicked off with this because we have a very full program for you today, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's really special. We can hear about research and we can hear about what's happening and what's in the pipeline, but figuring out how to actually take that thing that lives out here in the ethers and actually apply it to our lives can be a whole nother thing. So the more we can do to kind of figure out how those kind of things go together, and as we think about care plans and our treatment team, how actually research might be a part of that is really, it's a pretty exciting opportunity. So I'm really excited that you're going to get to hear from experts at UCSD who are doing some really key leading the way in doing research and understanding Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders. So I'm going to do a couple little housekeeping things for us. So for those of you that are new to us, up in the right your screen, if you see something that says view, it might say speaker, it might say gallery. If you want to see the Brady Bunch view so that we can all see each other's faces, I can't encourage you enough to turn on your video, because in these days of COVID, we rely on video as the one way we get to connect, and it's better than nothing. So if you turn on gallery, then we can see you and we can see your faces and feel a little closer to you. Speaker will actually just highlight, like if you had it on speaker right now, you just see my big face. So I highly recommend gallery. If you go to the bottom in the middle, there's a little chat button. Make sure you have your chat open. As we go through this, feel free to put your questions, comments, that kind of stuff in there. We will track it. You don't have to worry about keeping track of or remembering everything till the end. During question and answer, we'll keep track of it. We will ask the physicians the questions that you bring up. So just feel free to ask your questions in the chat button. We'll also be putting out some resources for this. And we've got a couple polls during this too. So stand by your computer, stand by ready and waiting to participate in the polls, because we're going to want to hear from you. This is definitely an interactive experience. So I'm not going to take much more time here, because like I said, we're going to cover a lot. I will go through in pieces the number of people, the team that we have here, but I want to make sure that I give you an overview. We are really fortunate to have just a powerful dynamic team from UCSD, who leads the movement disorder program at University of California, San Diego. We have Dr. Irene Litvan, who is an international well-known expert in research and in movement disorders, who will be kicking us off for us and getting us going and understanding really what research is about, what's the overview of research as we think about it from maybe a different context than just something that kind of exists out there that doesn't have a connection to us. And then we're going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into some current research that's happening. And we have Dr. Longardner and Dr. Bayram, who will be sharing with us some information about what's actually happening right now, some research studies that are happening. Then you're going to have a really cool opportunity to hear from Chris Addington, and she is their research coordinator at UCSD. It is a role that many people don't know much about, but it's a really key role as you navigate entering into research. And so we want to make sure that you understand that role and how it kind of helps that process for you. And then we'll open it up to some question and answers and make sure you guys get resources. So stay tuned, because we've got a busy afternoon. All right, I'm going to send it over to you, Dr. Litvan, and let you take it from here. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody else for being here. It is my pleasure to be here with all of you and try to see if I can explain what research is so you can get excited, perhaps. Um, and I hope you do, actually. So the first thing is, what is it? So research is a way for us to understand what are many things. For example, what are the causes of the disease? Link possible causes with a disease. We look at genetics, we look at the environment, nutrition, etc. So those are surveys, or it is blood markers. We can look at how to diagnose a disease. For example, we can try to see markers that to diagnose that disease and differentiate it from other diseases. So we may look at the blood, we may look at the spinal fluid, we may do MRIs of the brain. So we can do treatments to slow disease progression. So we need to know what is the natural history of the disease. We want to know what are the best outcome measures. So if we measure that something is good, how is it that we're going to measure? How is it that we're going to know whether this treatment is better than this other one? So we need to search for ways on knowing it. So we may do some scales clinically. We can do some markers in the blood or MRI, etc. So those are ways of understanding and diagnosing and trying to see how to look at possible outcome measures when we do research. So other ways of doing research. Well, we can do research to try to see if we can have a drug that can improve the symptoms, whether there is a drug or any other therapy for that matter that can slow disease progression. For example, it has been said that exercise helps slow disease progression in Parkinson's disease. So there are studies that are looking at that. So those are studies for symptoms, but also studies to slow disease progression. We want to know if we can have a disease that takes longer to get to certain outcomes. For example, problems in having a slow walk or problems swallowing or whatever. So those would be that people that don't have that problem. So how long it takes for this person to have it versus this other person when we're doing a specific treatment. Or how long does it take for someone to start medication, for example, when they are not taking any medication at all. So research has a role that is to link and understand diseases, diagnose diseases, and treat them. So who can benefit from this? The whole community, individual patients, science in general. So there are a lot of good things. And so people may ask, well, why would I do this? Well, there are many reasons. You may want to help other people that is not just you, but you want to help, for example, your kids, if your kids are going to have the same disease, or people in general that you don't even know, but you feel that you want to help others in case you cannot help the disease cannot be helped by that specific treatment for you. Or you can have something that would help you in particular. So there are many, many other reasons. So it's a question of generosity, it's a question of thinking about others, but also thinking about yourself. So I wanted to know several things. First, I want to know who has done any research at all. And for that, we're going to put a poll. Who has been participating on research?
Okay, so this is where you put it in. I see people filling in. I should have played the Jeopardy music. I've let you down. There's a question, does Fox Insight count, Dr. Litvan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, I'm very impressed. So 50% of you have participated in research. Congratulations. I hope you had a good experience. But now I want to know what kind of experience did you have? So was it a positive or was it a negative experience?
Okay, they're filling in. We still need a good 30% more people.
Okay, perfect. All right, sorry for that. So there are several phases in research. So let's say that we're talking about a medication. So the first thing is, okay, we have found that there is a reason for this medication to work. So either because it can slow the disease by this process or that other one, inflammation, oxidation, or any other process that may occur that we think it is related to the cause of the illness based on the prior research that has been done. So what is the first step? The first step is you try to show that that is the case, and you may do it in cells, and certainly you need to do it in animals and make sure that the animal has a disease. So that is a prior research that has been done to get to that one. Two, that it's safe. Three, that it works. All right. So you look at those animals and you give this medication versus give them nothing or something similar, but not the real drug. And so that is pretty much what you do. So that's the first step. So let's say that that step goes perfectly fine. So then there is a request to the FDA to see if that drug can be used for the next phase, that is to try it in normal volunteers and as well afterwards in human beings that are having that disease. So it depends on the situation. At times the volunteer part is not done when it is people that don't have the disease versus just doing it directly in those that have the disease. And that's the phase one. So this phase here. Then we have done that. We have found the right dose. We have found that the medication is very safe. So we go into a phase two. And that phase two is to try to see, is this medication better than placebo, like a sugar pill, for example? Placebo is that, something that is not really the medication itself, but looks like it. So let's say that that fails. So you have to start all over again with another medication with could be the same, maybe didn't get to the brain, maybe it doesn't last long, maybe has too many side effects, so you have to start all over. So let's say that you started all over and you are in the phase 2 and things are going great, no major side effects, and patients are doing very well. Perhaps there is some indications that this drug is working. So when that happens, then you go to the phase 3, that is many more people are part of the study. And when you show in this phase 3 that the medication is safe and that it is effective, that's when you go to the FDA to request for that they would allow you to submit a new drug acceptance, basically. So a new drug that will be in the market. So what is going on with that? Let me see if I can go to this one. So the cost of doing that for a pharmaceutical company is nothing less than 2.6 billions. And this is not the data from today. So this is several years ago. So it may be even more than that. How long does it take? All this process that I just said, it may take 13, 15 years. And the worst part of the story is that only 11% of the drugs that go into clinical testing really get it to the market. So the companies are investing a lot to be able to get a drug into the market. So, so the thing is that if we do have a drug that is already in the market and we're using it for this purpose, let's say that a drug that has worked in Parkinson's, now we want to use it in another disease, or vice versa. It works in another disease and we want to see if it works in people with Parkinson's. Let's see that if this drug may improve the sleep. So it works in other people, in people that have some other disease or just have sleep problems. Does it work for people with Parkinson's? So we can use the same drug that has been through all the same process of development. And then at that time, now we know that this drug is in the market, that is safe. So we don't have to go through the whole process. And that's what we call repurposing, is using old drugs for new applications. Then the cost is much less. It is 300 millions, and it may take half of the time to get that drug into being used for that particular disease. So some people say that repurposing drugs is like old wine in a new bottle. So what do we want to do at the end? Well, at the end, we would love to know what is the cost for each person. It may well be that each person that has Parkinson's may have a different cost. This one is genetic, this one is the inflammation, this is the oxidation, this is this gene, this other gene, etc. So we would love to know what each person may need for each particular situation. So that's what we call personalized medicine. And that's where we want to go in the long run. So you would get the right medication for you, that it may not work in someone else that has the same disease. So we are really many years away from that, but that is the overall idea. So I'm gonna stop sharing and let you know that we're gonna have a period in which we have questions. and I'll be happy to hear your questions about it. And if you made them already, I haven't seen them, so we'll talk about them later. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Litvan. I feel like that's part of the story that, again, never gets really told. You know, what happens and what is that investment in every new medication, whether it actually goes all the way through becoming a product that we have in the market or not. So that was really, really helpful information. And I see that some questions are coming in on the chat, which is great. We will keep track of them, I promise, and make sure that the doctors are asked those at the end. Thank you for that overview. We're going to transition now to hearing from Dr. Longardner and Dr. Bayram about some of the current studies that are happening right at UCSD. And let's see, I think we're going to give it first to you, Dr. Longardner. You're muted.
You're showing the...
Okay, yeah, the host had to unmute me. I was not able to unmute myself. Sorry
Okay.
about that. So thanks everyone for attending today. And I am Katie Longardner. I'm a movement disorders neurologist at UCSD. Just started as junior faculty here, and I'm going to be talking about some of the studies that I'm directly participating in as an investigator or sub-investigator. Can you all see my slides? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
So just to summarize what Dr. Litvan just said so eloquently, the goals of our research here are to advance knowledge of the causes that cause neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinson's disease, to develop ways that to diagnose disease early and accurately, and then to identify effective interventions, both to immediately improve quality of life for people with the disease, and then to work towards an eventual cure for these diseases. So one of the studies that we're doing now is a collaboration with a bioengineering team here at UCSD, Dr. Sheng Shu's research group. And this study is aiming to validate a new technology that is a novel, non-invasive wearable device that is used for continuous blood pressure monitoring. And this device uses these tiny stretchable electrodes coupled with ultrasound technology to detect the blood vessels contracting underneath the surface of the skin. And it's worn like a small patch about the size of a Band-Aid. And so the idea is that eventually we can use this device in people with blood pressure fluctuations. People with Parkinson's disease especially might have dramatic blood pressure fluctuations related to the medication use or from failure of the autonomic nervous system, that is the part of the disease itself that causes low blood pressure when standing and high blood pressure when lying down. And so we hope to use this device eventually in people with Parkinson's disease to identify and monitor their blood pressure for prolonged periods of time without having an invasive or obtrusive device. And so this study is made to just validate the device by comparing it to a standard manual blood pressure cuff. And after validating the device, then we hope to use it in the future for clinical trials in people with Parkinson's disease. And the main inclusion criteria for the study is just that you have to have an arm and have no active unstable medical conditions. This is a picture of the device on someone's neck. We can also put it on the elbow area or the wrist to detect the blood pressure from the arteries there. The next device is really exciting. This is a project I'm working on with Dr. Litvan and Dr. Joseph Wang's research team from the UCSD Department of Bioengineering and Nanoengineering. And this is a study in which we are working to validate this minimally invasive microneedle device to monitor glucose levels. And so currently, the only way to measure, levodopa levels, so similar to the way in which one would measure glucose. Currently, the only way to measure levodopa levels is by drawing the blood, and this way involves sending the blood specimen to an outside laboratory and takes a few days to return. And so it's not at all practical, and it's very expensive to use in clinical practice. So we hope with this device, we can monitor in real time levodopa levels in people with Parkinson's disease, and then use this to eventually improve symptom management by titrating the levodopa regimen according to the levels. And as I said, it's similar to the device that people with diabetes would use to check their glucose. And the eventual goal in this device is to use it in a closed loop system where the device could detect the levodopa levels, and there's another component that could then secrete or inject or infuse levodopa in response to the levels. The inclusion criteria for the study is that you have to have Parkinson's disease, must be able to walk, and must be taking oral carbidopa levodopa. The main exclusionary criteria are atypical Parkinsonism, that is diseases other than Parkinson's disease, having dementia, or having a deep brain stimulation device. And we are just starting to recruit for the study, and the link is here on the slide for anyone that's interested. The next study is an industry-sponsored study, and this is a study that's evaluating the duration of effect of TD9855, that is the investigational drug name. It's a selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, so it helps your body recycle the chemical norepinephrine. And this is being investigated in people that have symptomatic low blood pressure on standing or neurogenic orthostatic hypotension. Specifically, that is due to Parkinson's disease or related disorders, so not due to diabetes or some other process. The study design, it's a phase 3 study. So Dr. Litvan just told us about the different phases. This is the last sort of phase of clinical research. It's a 22-week multicentric study where you take the study drug, and then and half of the people it's taken away. So it's a randomized withdrawal, and then they assess how the blood pressure and the symptoms from low blood pressure respond from this medication. The main inclusion criteria is that you have to be diagnosed with orthostatic hypotension. So again, that's low blood pressure on standing as determined by a tilt table test. Have some orthostatic symptoms, that is when you stand up, you feel lightheaded or dizzy, like you're going to faint or pass out, and then have plasma norepinephrine levels at least 100 after being seated for at least 30 minutes. The main exclusionary criteria are a known intolerance or allergy to norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, having cognitive impairment with a Mocha score less than 23, or using any blood pressure medication to lower the blood pressure for high blood pressure, essentially. Okay, and then the next one I'm going to talk about is the Abv study. This is a study investigating the use of a new compound that is a subcutaneous carbidopa-levodopa infusion. And the goal is to show that it's better than oral carbidopa-levodopa tablets for treating motor fluctuations in Parkinson's disease. This is a double-blind, double-dummy study. So that means that if you participate, you get either placebo pills or a fake device that's infusing levodopa. And we don't know which one, the researchers don't know which one you're getting, and you won't know which one you're getting, to see whether it's safe and efficacious compared to oral carbidopa-levodopa tablets after 12 weeks. The main inclusion criteria for the study is you have to be at least 30 years old, be diagnosed with levodopa responsive Parkinson's disease, have a certain cognitive assessment score 24 or greater, and have an average of 22.5 hours of off time every day that's not adequately controlled by current medical therapy. The main exclusionary criteria for the study are low B12 levels, deep brain stimulation or duopa placement, or any history of any skin conditions or skin disorders. Okay, and then from here, I'm going to let Dr. Bayram talk about the rest of the studies.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Ece. I am an MD PhD from Turkey, working in this group as a researcher. And I'm going to talk briefly about the observational studies that we have in our center. because on top of all the clinical trials and device-related stuff, it is very, very important to understand what actually is happening in this disease so we can work on finding better treatment options. So PD gene is one of such studies. You are not getting an intervention. It is all about getting the genetic mapping of Parkinson's disease, and it's a multi-site study, and they collect blood. It's very straightforward, and your clinician does the neurological evaluation that they do during their regular visit. So it's nothing extra. And based on your genetic results, you do get a phone call for genetic counseling because they may or may not find a mutation that you need to be aware of that can actually affect your family. So they make sure to give you the news with counseling. They don't just drop the news on you and disappear. So that's pretty nice. And at the 3rd month of your first visits, they send you some online questionnaires that you can fill out. They're very brief and it's related to the research itself. It's not related to much details about like your personal stuff. And inclusion and exclusion criteria are very straightforward as well. You have to have a Parkinson's disease diagnosis because the study is about Parkinson's disease mainly. And you have to be willing to undergo genetic testing because you may not prefer to know what your genetic mapping is. So we are not able to include those people. And if you have another type of Parkinsonism, not Parkinson's disease, that's an exclusion. And to make sure we are collecting the right genes, we are excluding people who have had blood transfusions in the past 3 months and bone marrow transplants within the past 5 years. And for the time being, the study is only available for UCSD participants, so we can make sure the people are diagnosed correctly, because doctors are tricky. We always question each other's diagnosis, so we're just trusting ours for the time being. And there's another very straightforward study like this too. This is again a registry for Parkinson's disease participants. And this is a very brief study as well. You just have one on-site visit when you're doing your regular clinical visit, and you fill out a couple extra forms related to your medical history on top of your regular neurological evaluation that's done by your clinician. And there are some self-report questionnaires that you and your co-participants, caregiver, fill out. And that's it. This is a very easy study. And you have to have a Parkinson's disease diagnosis to be a part of the study. And if you have any other neurological diagnosis, that's an exclusion. And again, it's only for UCSD participants, so we can make sure the diagnosis is accurate. All right, this one is a bit longer compared to the other studies that we talked about. This is the Dementia with Lewy Bodies Consortium. This is a national study, and we are one of the sites. And this is about creating a registry for people with Lewy body dementia. And we collect a lot of data, and it's annual visits. So we look at how the disease is progressing, and we are looking for biomarkers that can help us diagnose this disease better, earlier, and also markers that can help us track this disease better and earlier. So the visits include neuroimaging. You get your MRI, that scan. We steal some of your blood, and we perform neurological and neuropsychological evaluation. The visits may tend to be a bit long, but we try our best to accommodate, especially now we are performing remote visits. So we are trying our best not to have you stuffed in a room during a pandemic, and you're able to complete the very long part of neuropsych in the comfort of your home while you're viewing one of our team members questioning you. So to be included in this study, you have to have a diagnosis of dementia with Lewy bodies or Parkinson's disease dementia, or you have to be in the earlier stage So that would be prodromal dementia with Lewy bodies. You don't have dementia yet, but you are predicted to have dementia, and the age has to be below 90. And since it's a very extensive study, we want to make sure that you have an okay level of cognitive skills, so this doesn't become too hard for you or us to complete all the scales in the study. Another study like this extensive is the 4-repeat tauopathy neuroimaging initiative that we have. This is shorter. We have 3 visits, baseline 6 month, 12 month, but each visit includes an extensive battery. We perform neuroimaging, tau PET, MRI. This is about finding a good tau biomarker. And we perform retinal imaging. We again steal your blood, and we also do the neurological and neuropsychological evaluations and some self-report forms. And there's the option of doing a lumbar puncture. And for this study, since it's about tau, we recruit people with tauopathy. So those would be progressive supranuclear palsy or cortical basal degeneration. And that is a type of Parkinsonism, but not Parkinson's. So people have to be aged 40 to 80. They have to have a study partner because we go through a lot of co-participant questionnaires in the study. And since it's extensive and we want to make sure we're not missing too much data, so we want people to be able to commit to completing these assessments and going through imaging, because some people may not prefer to go through all these imaging or may have a hard time with imaging. That's normal. So we're unable to include those people. And since it's an extensive data collection, we do exclude people who are not too good with cognition. We don't want it to be too hard on them, so we exclude those people. And if they have any inability to have MRI or PET, any devices, that's not good for MRI, etc. And since it has a lot of neuropsychological testing, we want to make sure they have decent visual and auditory skills. It's of course okay to use glasses and auditory impairment stuff, but other than that, that's an exclusion. And for this study, we are currently also accepting healthy volunteers. So even if you don't have this disease, if you're a healthy volunteer, we're very excited to include you. All right, another study is the ALL-FTD. This is again a study for tauopathies, and the assessments are very similar to Fortney. So for the time being, we are trying to include whoever is interested in Fortney and ALL-FTD as well. This is all to create a registry for people with frontotemporal lobar degeneration. This has a bit more visits than Fortney. It has 5 visits. You see us at baseline, and then we do annual follow-ups, and these visits are a bit extensive as well. So we do MRI, blood collection, neurological and neuropsychological evaluations, questionnaires for the participant and the co-participant, and there's an optional lumbar puncture if you wish. But this study also has a biofluid focused arm. So if you feel like you can't commit that many visits and you would just like to be coming in for a baseline visits, giving some of your blood so we can run some analysis and completing a more limited collection of data, that's okay. We can do the other arm for that too. So the inclusion in this study is if you have a diagnosis of frontotemporal lobar degeneration, or if you don't have a diagnosis, but you're a part of a family with a very strong medical history for having a syndrome related to frontotemporal lobar degeneration. That is also included. And of course, age has to be over 18. We prefer if it's over 30. And since there are a lot of self and co-participant questionnaires, we require that you have a study partner. And if you were found to have a structural brain lesion that could explain your syndrome, then that is an exclusion. And if you have an Alzheimer's disease causing mutation or a biomarker evidence for Alzheimer's disease that can explain why you're having the syndrome, then those are exclusion criteria as well. All right, to end our parts with Dr. Longardner. So research only happens because you participate. If you don't participate, we're not really worth much. So it's teamwork, it's work from your end as much as work from our end. So if you heard or feel like you might be interested in one of the studies, or if you would just like to learn more about the studies we have, or even put your name in there so we can contact you in the future if there is a new study that you may be interested, please reach out to us, join a study so that we can advance science together and finally find a cure for these diseases. And this is our big team, and everyone you see in this picture is part of both clinic and research team. So we are a very big team, and we are hoping we can welcome you in our research so we can have you a part of our research family. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was just a wonderful bow on that. Dr. Longardner and Dr. Bayram, that was absolutely wonderful to learn about the amazing research that's happening. And what a gift that we have so many things, you know, percolating and being tested and tried, and we're learning for Parkinson's. I say that every time, but we're so lucky we don't just have Cinnamate anymore. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a perfect kind of lead off to, you know, hearing about the, now I lost her. Let me see if I can find her back. There she is, Christina. I lost you in my Brady Bunch lineup. There she is.
I'm here.
Okay, great. We'd love to hear from you about kind of how you get involved. And I'm just going to tell you that there is a question in the chat, which I think you're going to talk about, which is, can I keep my neurologist or my movement disorder specialist if I participate with UCSD? So I'd love to kick it off to you, Christina, to talk with us about this. And Christina is the research coordinator with the program.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen so you guys can also see what I look like since I'm wearing a mask. So let me just share right here. Give me just a second here. Okay. So I am part of the Parkinson and Other Movement Disorders Center here at UCSD. I'm a research coordinator, which I'll go over a little more about that in just a second here. So I'm gonna go over how research happens. And here we are here. So you can, this is me right on the far left. So here at UCSD, we conduct both observational studies and clinical trials. We're also looking for healthy volunteers. And you can see on our site, we have actually added a section for healthy volunteers right here. And then we have it broken down by each different indication that we do studies for. So we are, all of our currently enrolling studies can be found here. And we also have some details about studies that perhaps are ongoing, but they're not currently enrolling. But if you just want to know kind of what we're doing, it's also there. Our research team consists of a research manager, Ileana, right here, 4 clinical research coordinators, and a regulatory coordinator. And all of our information, you can see all of us on the website and our backgrounds. So while you're in a study, your primary contact will be your research coordinator. So the main research coordinator assigned to that study, that'll be your primary contact. You can email us, call us, all of the questions that you have, those you can direct our way, and we can ask the doctor for you, get back to you about it, but we will be your primary point of contact. And so on here on our website also, once you click on these, you can also find information on how to contact us, but I'm also going to go over a little more about finding studies and contacting us in just a second here. And while you're in the study, to answer that question, you can keep your primary neurologist. You can also get copies of what we do here to give to your primary neurologist. So you don't have to change your primary care doctor or primary neurologist, nothing like that. So it's kind of almost like also getting a second opinion. Usually Dr. Litvan will see you and give you a second opinion, and we can stay in contact with your primary as well. So here I know we kind of already went over this a little bit, so I'll just go over it very briefly about the types of studies that we do. So there's observational studies and clinical trials. In observational studies, we're going to focus on collecting data or observing, and no experimental medication is given. Observational studies help us learn more about a disease or a condition and come up with a hypothesis that can be put to a test in a clinical trial. Observational studies can find associations between things, but can't prove that one thing causes another. And one of the things you'll always hear is correlation does not equal causation. So, and then in clinical trials over here, we have different phases. And this is the point where it will be tested in humans. Before that, as Dr. Litvan covered, we will test in cells, they'll test on animals. So here's when we're starting to test in humans. So a clinical trial is also called an interventional study. In clinical trials, we test new ways to prevent, detect, or treat a disease. Treatments could be medications, they could be surgical procedures, new devices, or ways to use existing treatments. In phase 1, it's usually less than 100 people, and the purpose is to find out whether a new treatment or intervention is safe and to find the appropriate doses. In phase 2 here, that's usually about 100 to 300 people, and we focus on effectiveness but continue to study safety. Safety is going to be studied all the way along, and you're going to be followed very closely. Participants receiving the new treatment or intervention could be compared to those receiving a different treatment or placebo, which Dr. Litvan also mentioned before, and we'll go over that a little bit more. And in phase 3, this is prior to submission to the FDA, and that can be as many people as needed. So it could be several hundred, or in the case of, say, the COVID vaccines, it could be 30,000 or more. So here we gather information about safety and effectiveness to prove whether a treatment or an intervention works. And then the sponsor will submit that to the FDA for approval if the trial results are positive. And then in phase 4, this is once the FDA approves the treatment or intervention, they'll do phase 4 studies after approval, and that can be thousands upon thousands of people involved. And the treatment is being monitored in large, diverse populations to get a full view of its safety and effectiveness. So here, what should you expect in a study? One of the questions I've gotten is, how do I choose a study? So I'll go over how you can find studies and then narrow down how to choose it. But what we begin with is informed consent. So with informed consent, we're going to give you all the information about the study. We have a whole packet that provides everything about the study, everything you should expect, risks, benefits, everything. And we'll give that to you and give you plenty of time to read it, review it. You can review it with your spouse, you can take it to your primary care doctor, and you can really look it over and decide whether or not you want to decide. And you can ask us questions, you can call us anytime and ask us questions, and go back and forth for a month and, you know, decide when you're ready to sign up. And that we'll do in person. So here are some of the common things you're going to see is double blind, single blind, or open label. So in double blind, we don't know and you don't know what you're getting. In single blind, that means that you don't know as the participant what you're getting. And open label, that means we know what you're getting and you're getting the real thing. And so that might be in like an extension. So sometimes some studies will have, you'll do the main study and they might have an extension if you want to continue taking the medication after the study is over. So participation is always voluntary. You can always withdraw at any time. We don't want you to feel forced to be in a study. It's your decision completely. Placebo, we went over this a little. So placebo is non-active medication. So what the sponsor will do is they'll have a medication that looks like the real thing. So it might be a pill and it's going to be identical. You're not going to be able to tell. Or if you're getting an infusion type of medication, it'll be saline solution. So it'll just hydrate you basically. What about your privacy? Privacy is always, we have to follow the same standards that the hospital follows. And there are HIPAA guidelines that we're protecting your privacy. Everything is locked up the same, everything is coded. It's going to be the same level of privacy that you would have when you go to any doctor. And so here are some of the common questions that we get here. And it really will depend on what study you participate in. So potential risks and benefits, that will be in the informed consent. Our visits in person or through telemedicine, we're still doing visits in person. We have a very good protocol here for safety with masking and testing. We're getting tested weekly. We've been vaccinated, and so we're still seeing patients, and everything has been going along. I would say about a month after everything locked down, we kept going, and we're still seeing patients regularly. What happens in a visit, that will depend on your study, and that would be covered in the informed consent form. But it'll be kind of like a normal doctor's visit. We just might have some additional questionnaires, or you'll get your blood drawn more often than you would going to the doctor and only get it drawn once a year. How long are the visits? Again, that'll depend on the study. A lot of studies, I would say on average, are about 2-hour visits. How long does your participation last? Again, depends on the study, but usually our studies go for about a year, but they might be longer or have an extension period. And do I get treatment? That will depend on what kind of study you're in. If you're in one of the clinical trials, there are chances for placebo. And then sometimes they'll go into open label where you will get the treatment after being, say, on a double-blind possibility of placebo for a year. So here, how you can get involved. So I have some barcodes in here. If you have a cell phone, you can just hover your camera over the barcode I'm going to show, or you can type in the websites to your web browser. So some of the websites that are really good, here I just made a quick little shortened version of our website. You can also go to clinicaltrials.gov, and this is a great website because it has to be updated. This is going to be your most up-to-date website. There are a lot of websites out there about clinical trials, but clinicaltrials.gov is the most updated because it's legally required. And then the Michael J. Fox Foundation website, that is also a very good resource. That a lot of people find us actually through that and are given a lot of information that way, and it's very user-friendly. The clinicaltrials.gov, I'm going to go over it. It takes some learning, but it's also a very good resource. So here, all clinical trials must be listed on this site, and the website has a database of clinical trials, frequently asked questions, and general information up here at the top. And it also gives you a glossary of common terms. So words marked with an I, those will provide a definition or explanation when clicked. You can enter as much or as little information as you'd like into the search bars, and the more criteria, the more narrowed down the results will be. So if you want it kind of vague, you want to leave your options open to driving a distance of, say, an hour or two, then you can set the distance here. And then here is just an example of, I looked up one of our studies and it's showing here. Actually, both of these are our studies. They're both showing here. And when you click on them, it will show you all the sites that are conducting the study. It will show you the inclusion, exclusion criteria. So you can kind of figure out if you qualify, if you're eligible. And it'll also show you contact information for how you contact us or who you contact to get involved in the study, and who the main doctor is as well. So again, here's the website, the little barcode that you can just hover your camera over and it'll automatically pop up. And we are also listed on the Parkinson'S Foundation website as well. So here, last slide, that's just our picture. And if you have any questions, you can add it to the chat and we'll cover it at the end.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I love that little tiny URL. That was absolutely delightful. Let's see. I think Lisa, maybe you can put that little tiny URL in the chat too, and people that might have missed it or didn't get it typed in, they can at least just click on it. Okay, if you guys are good for it, I'm just about ready to start asking questions. Andrea, I think you had one more poll you were going to do though, weren't you? Let's see. Looking up, there it is. Would you like to participate in Parkinson's research? So, you know, with what you've learned today, does this kind of engage you and excite you about being a part of Parkinson's research. And while you guys are filling this in, Dr. Litvan, you may have said this, and please forgive me. I want to say it's something like 80% of research studies it's difficult to get the number of people that you need. Something like that, right? Isn't it just a huge number?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So at times,
and without that, you can't move forward.
Right. So if there are not enough patients involved, research cannot go forward. So that's what I was saying, is generosity towards others, and it may end up being generosity towards yourself.
That's great. And I think this is great. So we have 81% of people who are, definitely interested in looking at participating in research. And we started with a 50-50. So, hey, not bad for an hour in, because part of it is just learning and understanding how that, how it actually plays a part in your life. So thank you for that really great overview. I'm going to dive in because I have like 2 pages of notes that I took down. And one of these actually sort of piggybacks on what we were just talking about, Dr. Litvan, which is, how is it determined, the number of participants or the duration of the study? How is that kind of thing determined when research is being developed?
So remember, I talked to you about what it is, an outcome measure. So it is how much time, for example, for you to use levodopa. So based on that and how much of a benefit we think you want to have in a study, is it 30% of improvement? Is it 50%? Is it 80%? Whatever. Then you estimate the number of subjects that are going to participate in your study. So it is statistically done based on that. And it could be based on something else that is not, that example. It could be just a clinical stage or, or a biomarker.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So some of these I can't claim to have a lot of knowledge of, but there was a question about Gdnf trial, and just curious about that.
Unfortunately, that study, we just learned that it was negative. So that's what happens, you do all the trial and only 11% really get to the market, remember? So unfortunately, that's what you need to have a lot of volunteers, because there are many studies that need to be done in order to really get to the real treatment that we want to get. By the way, one thing I wanted to mention is that our own mission is to deliver outstanding patient treatments, as well as trying to get an advance of therapies and experimental knowledge, so we can really be innovative and be able to truly understand the illnesses, diagnose them, and make people, that is, the ones that have the disease as well as their family, do so much better. So that pretty much, I would say that it is translating innovative research into state-of-the-art, comprehensive, personalized patient care in movement disorders. So it is to improve the science, but it is also to improve the care. That is, at the end of the day, what we want to do. And
Yes.
Overall, our vision is to enhance the mind and body one life at a time through new science, new medicine, and new cures. So we hope we can achieve that, but we're trying as hard as we can.
Thank you for sharing that. And even when something doesn't move forward, you still learn from it, right? I mean, there's learnings that can be taken, one person published negative study results, and I don't know if they get published or not. They do, okay.
Yes, all the studies
Great.
are published. So other scientists don't repeat the same experimental treatment or the same search for a biomarker or whatever. So we have scientific peer-reviewed journals, and these are the ones that truly tell us what's going on. So we read them to be knowledgeable of how science is and how we can improve the life of our patients.
That's great. So we can learn from even the things. So even if you're part of a study and it doesn't move forward, that's not time wasted on anybody's part, and isn't that always the way in life? Sadly, we have to learn through things that don't always work. So there was a question about the blood pressure device, wondering if will that eventually be used, that data be used to determine the medication level or medication for a person?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people with Parkinson's disease have undiagnosed low blood pressure, and that might make them feel unwell, faint, or lightheaded or dizzy. But currently the way that we assess for low blood pressure is by asking you to measure your blood pressure at home, or we do it in the clinic, and that's just the snapshot of the day. And so the idea is that we use this blood pressure monitor at home throughout the day during your daily activities, and we'd be able to get more data to confirm that you are having low blood pressure fluctuations, and then use that information to prescribe personalized treatment plans.
Cool, very exciting. There was a lot of little chatter in the chat about feeling excited about some of these opportunities, and also the one that Abv is working on, which somebody was wondering, where's that levodopa device placed on the body? So the sub-Q device, I believe, is what we were talking about.
I believe it's in the abdomen and the abdominal tissue.
Yes, and for the extension, we have the option to move it to different areas. So if the abdomen gets a little tender, we're able to move it to leg. They'll let us move it.
Nice. And somebody did wonder if they currently have Duopa, so they're using the PEG-J right now. Is that something, when this comes to market, assuming this gets through all of the pieces of the trial, will people be able to then shift to the sub-Q? So no, huh? Okay. Good to know. I see Dr. Litvan is shaking her head on that one. Okay, so that's really good to know. Let's see, so there was kind of a general question. There was excitement about the blood pressure study that's happening. Obviously a serious issue for people with Parkinson's, and a frankly seriously under addressed historically, so it's exciting to look at another new treatment. Somebody was wondering if you can just give a quick little brief overview about what that study does again, or what that's doing that's different.
The blood pressure monitor study?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
so the exciting thing is the technology, really, that it's a really innovative technology that's using this tiny device that is the size of a small Band-Aid that uses ultrasound. So if any of you women who have had children, you get a prenatal ultrasound, or maybe have had an echocardiogram of the heart. And usually that involves using a person that's holding a probe with gel on the end of it, and they have to position it just right to get the right picture. This device uses machine learning algorithms to get the same information that a person usually would have to do by sticking the probe over your skin. And so it's an automated process that eventually will be operator independent. So meaning you don't need a person sticking the device there. You just put it on like a Band-Aid and then go about your day. And so it's really the technology that makes the study exciting. We have a few different devices on the market for prolonged blood pressure monitoring, but I've tried them on, and not really something that is comfortable to wear for prolonged periods of time. It's kind of big and clunky. You can't shower with it, for example. And so leaves a lot to be desired in terms of what people would, be willing to or comfortable wearing for prolonged periods of time. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you for that. Thank you. That is exciting. And as Myra put in here, yeah, people who kind of walk around with the cuff on to kind of keep track of what's going on. It's really exciting to think about utilizing, technology so that there can be more independence and quality of life. So that's just,
I think the other important thing is it takes the burden of work and measuring the blood pressure away from the person. That can be a lot of work to constantly write down the numbers all day. And this way you don't have to worry about it. The machine does the work for you. Eventually, that's what we're working towards.
I love that. So when you get to that place with it and you're ready to take it to that next level of study, we'll work with you on that piece and we'll talk about how much time did people actually get back so that they can have more time and more quality in their life. Once you put a bow on all of the medical and technology piece, we can kind of work on adding in that quality of life piece, because that is, getting time back is just everything, isn't it? So that's wonderful. Someone wondered if B12 levels are controlled with oral supplements, will you qualify for the sub-Q levodopa?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So if you're doing B12 levels controlled by oral supplements, you're still a candidate for the sub-Q levodopa. Very cool. Okay. There was a question about the status of, and I'm sorry because I'm probably going to massacre this, Embrexel. No, did I say that right? I did, okay. No. Yeah.
So this is an experimental study, so it is not in the market.
Okay,
so
good to know.
We said are repurposing drugs, so it still takes time, even if it is in the market, to get accepted as for another indication. So we don't.
Oh, got it.
We don't know if it works or it doesn't. Basically, that's the response.
So it's kind of an issue of another indication. So like I think of something like Gocovri that just had, was only dyskinesia, just got an indication for additional auth. So that's kind of what you're talking about. They're like, right, as you look at a new indication. Right. Okay, great question. Another nuance to the research that is important so that we can maximize what's already out there. There were a couple questions that kind of go together, I think. One is, can you explain what a Mocha score is? And how do you determine if you have Lewy bodies?
Ece, I think that's for you.
Sure. So the Mocha is a brief cognitive screening test, and it's usually done by your clinician or a neuropsychologist. They have to be certified to do it. So it briefly, in 5 to 10 minutes, test how your cognition state is doing for the time being. So the scores range from 0 to 30, and they have the cutoffs. And for studies that do extensive neuropsychological evaluations, we try to recruit people above a certain score. So like the whole testing is not too hard on them. And Lewy body dementia is a clinician diagnosis. So your clinician has to diagnose you based on your symptoms following a diagnostic criteria. So if you have Parkinson's disease, dementia, or dementia with Lewy bodies, one of those clinical diagnoses, that means you have one of the Lewy body dementias. But just by looking at the symptoms, I wouldn't suggest you self-diagnosing. It should be up to the clinician, because you don't want to get lost in that symptom scheme, and you may be misdiagnosing yourself and getting anxious and worried about something that you don't have to. So just leave that part to the clinicians and don't worry about that diagnosis part for yourself.
Thank you for that. And this is where I have to put the plug in of if you don't see a movement disorder specialist, if you aren't sure if you see a movement disorder specialist, we can't emphasize enough that it's so important that people see a movement disorder specialist and really link up with the experts. So, the neurologists who've done advanced learning and advanced advanced studying in movement disorders specifically. Neurology has so many different components that linking up, that's also how you're going to get engaged with research, because the movement disorder specialists are going to be the ones, and especially these centers are going to be the ones kind of really moving forward with the research. So when you look at the tinyurl.com/UCSD studies, it's going to take you to their website, and you can see like movement disorder specialists there. If you're not sure if you see a movement disorder specialist, please feel free to reach out to us. We will help you figure out if you are seeing one. And if you're not, I always tell people you are not cheating on your doctor if you make sure to add a movement disorder specialist, because this is your healthcare. We would never consider, if people were diagnosed with cancer, no one has convinced me yet that someone would consider seeing someone who wasn't a specialist. We would all go to the greatest, most refined specialist we could possibly get. And we deserve the same level of quality care when it comes to a movement disorder. So we will preach it over and over. And you know, we're really fortunate, you're really fortunate to have that in San Diego and in many places. And with telemedicine, we're able to help bridge some of that divide that we weren't able to before. So I have to always put that little plug in there. Somebody was curious, they have a friend, but not a care partner. So maybe they don't have a spouse, but they have somebody who helps them that's a friend. Will they still be eligible to participate in research?
Yeah, for those studies that require a core participant, it doesn't have to be a blood relative, or it doesn't have to be someone you live with. There's usually a certain amount of time you have to spend with them so they know about your disease status. But it can be a friend, it can be a neighbor, it can be someone you like. It's all up to you.
Yes, maybe you don't want it to be your spouse. That's great. Thank you. And so with that too, somebody sent me a private question asking about why is DBS and why are some of these other things oftentimes excluded? And I think there's a misnomer. I think people believe that they're excluded because you can't, for example, if I can't have DBS and be part of the study, then that means I'll never be able to access that medication, which is not really how they're defined and designed, right? But I think there's a confusion about that for people. In terms of DBS and, you know, because it's excluded from a lot of research, correct?
Right. So it is excluded from research trials, so we don't get confused one treatment with another. But obviously, once the drug gets into the market, anybody that has the disease can use it, including those that have DBS. It shouldn't be different, the response from those that have DBS versus not having it.
Oh, right. So it's really just being really clear about the benefit of the treatment. And I mean, your only other way would be to basically like make it inoperable, or, you know, you can't utilize your DBS, but that makes so much sense. That's great. Okay. People had some questions about what if I don't live nearby? And I know there's some people on here from, you know, Arizona, which, you know, I currently live in Arizona and it's a 6-hour drive, which to me, if I could do a lot of stuff remotely and maybe come over for a visit, you know, every so often, you know, to be part of something that might help me. I mean, I don't think that's always a negative piece, but can you talk about that for people who don't live nearby? Yeah, especially in July, exactly, Andrea.
So I don't know who wants to talk about this, but certainly some people that don't live in the state come for research. So we see that, and they either drive or come by plane, depending on the scenario. But there are some studies that are also in Arizona or close by, and so you try to go to the place that is nearby. That's why the Clinicaltrials Gov is so good, because it tells you where are the places in which you can go, and then you can see if it is close to your where you live.
Yes. And if you prefer to come
Excellent.
to us, some of the sponsor trials, so if it's a pharmaceutical trial, some of them will, well, a decent amount of them will provide reimbursement for your travel costs. So that's another thing to keep in mind, because we do have patients who prefer to see Dr. Litvan. And so they come from far away to see her.
By nature of what we do as movement disorders neurologists, a lot of it is hands-on and a lot of it is hard to assess over Zoom, even when all the technology works perfectly. So it can be hard to do a lot of these things over Zoom or over telemedicine, unfortunately.
Especially as you're trying to like look for the nuances and the effectiveness of therapies, which is really different than somebody that you've seen in the office or in person many times and you kind of know them. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So there were a couple questions about where to find a centralized place to see what studies are out there. So clinicaltrials.gov definitely is something that is always available. Let's see. There was a question about, are there any exercise studies that are done?
I believe the VA does exercise studies, right? Ece, do you have information?
Yeah, there are right now 2 studies being conducted by VA under Dr. Schieser's research lab, and she's a part of our center too, and we work with her. So there is one exercise study that is not currently enrolling. It's done with enrolling parts, but it is to see the effects of exercise on the brain structure and functional change in Parkinson's disease. And we are collecting the longitudinal data for that for the time being and not currently taking new people. And they're also running a mindfulness study. It's not totally exercise, but they do have some exercise component in that too. And they're interested in understanding if mindfulness can provide benefit to some Parkinson's related symptoms or not. And there are, for the time being, they are unfortunately trying to run things remotely. So we're all adapting.
Yes. Okay, perfect. And let's see, there was some question around peripheral neuropathy and Parkinson's disease. I don't know that there's a research study happening with that. Is there? There isn't one. Okay.
No, there isn't.
I made a note of that because okay, thank you. I made a note of that because I think it's a great topic. So I made a note. We can look at adding a live stream education program perhaps tied to that. I think it's a really good question. I believe we've actually had, at least not recently, a topic attending to that. And somebody did ask about the frontotemporal study that's being done, and that's again where they can find that on the clinicaltrials.gov to see where the closest place is for them as well. Correct. Okay. Boy, I think I have gotten through. I hope I haven't missed anybody. Thank you, Lisa. We put in there a couple of virtual exercise classes. Oh, thank you for putting that in there. There are a wealth of resources, and certainly in San Diego, there are many exercise programs. UCSD has many support groups that you facilitate through UCSD and in partnership in the community, the Parkinson Association in the community. And so we want to invite people to, if you haven't downloaded our app yet, our app is PD and Me. Maybe I'll see if one of the our team members can put that in the chat. PD and Me, it's a free app. You'll be able to put in your zip code, and it will tell you where all the exercise programs are nearby. It'll tell you where all of the support group programs or support groups are. It'll also let you know what's happening live stream, and it's for all 50 states. So if you are to go spend your, let's see, winters in San Diego and are somewhere else in the summer, you can keep track of it that way. If you're on because you have a loved one who has Parkinson's or another movement disorder, you can help them get linked into support. So feel free to download the PD and Me. The information is also on the website, but That's going to give you the most up to date. And the physicians that have spoken here, the physicians that are part of UCSD are on the website as well. So you'll be able to link directly to them. We have just a few more minutes. I don't know, Dr. Litvan, if you'd like to say any final words. It's been wonderful to listen to all of you, and I'm inspired by what you're contributing to the community and to the health and wellness and, understanding of how we can better serve people in our community.
Thank you. It is a pleasure for us to be able to share what we do, and we would love to see that a lot of you would participate. If you want to participate in any of our studies, you can always go to our website and you can send an email through it, a confidential email that gets to us, and you can say that you want to be part of such and such study, or you're in a waiting list for studies that do whatever. And we have a list that we keep. And so when we have a new study, and we will have new studies actually for Parkinson's disease, quite exciting ones, I have to say, but I want to get closer to them before we announce them. But I can tell you that we will have very, very exciting studies to slow disease progression. So just keep yourself aware that there is a lot of hope, because everybody's working to try to see that we improve your life, the life of your family, and the community in general. So we look forward to meeting you, or we look forward that you participate in any study anywhere, because I think that this would be a lovely thing for you to do. But if you don't want to, that's okay as well. We accept people that don't want to participate, and you can just have your general care, and that's okay as well. You decide one thing or another. So lovely to meet you all, and thank you for your excellent questions.
Yeah, they were excellent, and thank you. And I have to just echo Maximilian's comment to thank you for all you do and for this talk, and definitely go get linked into your website, because you will then be up to date on all of the new studies that are regularly coming out. This recording, Andrea put it down, this recording and the links associated to it will be up on the YouTube channel tomorrow. So if you feel like you missed something, or if you have a loved one or somebody that you know that you want to look forward to, we really encourage you to. Thank you so much to the terrific UCSD team making this happen, and Lisa Darren, who's a key part of the UCSD team, even though she didn't present. Hi, Lisa. There she is. Okay, so I'm just really grateful for all of you, and if you guys can join me in our gratitude wave to thank the team for being with us for this hour and a half and helping us, understand the scope of what's being offered, as well as how it's set up, that would be wonderful. Thank you, you guys, so much for being with us. Many, many thanks. We look forward to seeing you again soon online, and everybody have a terrific evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.